video. I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to call this one, but it's in conjunction with kit number 68, where you get a gorgeous selection of 5 Texture Craft Perfect cards, a couple of pearlescent ones and a glitter card. You've also got in this kit a stamp cleaning cloth from Nuvo, which are always useful, and they actually really do get off the Nuvo hybrid ink pads from your photopolymer stamps really well. I mean, I'm not 100% sure about red inks, whether they would completely get rid of the staining with the red ink, but the green ink that we get in the kit actually came off the stamps really well using the stamp cleaning cloth to clean it off just with water. So I'm sure if you use the stamp cleaning solution with the stamp cleaning cloth, it might make your stamps even cleaner as well. But anyway, we've got another one of those stamp cleaning cloths. I think we had one a few kits ago, probably quite a few kits ago. The time goes so quickly, you feel like it's only a couple kits ago, but it's like a whole year's worth or something. Then we've also got a pack of 7x7 bright white cards and envelopes, and these are it says it all in the American terms, but I think they're a 300 GSM white card blank with like a 240 GSM envelope. If you want the pounds, the card is £111 and £44 for the envelope weight, and you get 10 of each of them in there. Then also in this kit we have got the Craft Perfect dimensional foam pads in the 5mm squares, and I'm also going to be showing you a technique with these as part of this video. You're also getting Nuvo wise, you're getting a full Nuvo drop, like full size Nuvo drop bottle in Wisteria purple. You've got a mini little embossing powder, which is what we're actually using for the main part of this tutorial. I'm showing you with embossing powders. And in the kit unboxing video, I will be saying exactly how many of the projects that I've made I created just using this little pot of embossing powder as well, and we'll see how much is left. So you will have seen that yesterday if you watched them in the right order. Then we're also getting a small mini Nuvo hybrid ink pad. This is the Clear Mark, which is the sticky one that works with your embossing powders. So it's really nice that they've actually given us the ink pad to work with this, and the technique I'm doing in this tutorial video, it's really good to have a brand new ink pad for this as well, because it's extra sticky, so the glittery embossing powder will stick really nicely. Then we've also got a full-sized Nuvo hybrid ink pad, which is how they originally came. There was originally 7 of the ink pads in a few colours and neutrals like brown, black and grey, and this is the Safari green colour, so really gorgeous deep dark green kind of tone. And then for the stamps and dies from this kit, it's called the Frames for Friends, or it might be called Assorted Frames. I seem to have 2 names for it because the sticker says Assorted Frames, but we got told Frames for Friends was the name of it, so I'm not 100% sure on the name of the kit. But these are all of the dies that you get in there, and I'll be using a few of them obviously for this tutorial video. You've got some beautiful sentiments in there. You've got these gorgeous ones, which, as you can tell from the either of those names, whichever one's the right one, it has the word frame in there, because these elements you can actually use multiples of the same one or a mixture of 2 or 3 of them to create different sort of frames to sort of mount around your sentiment, or just to draw your eye like to the centre of the card as well, or even draw your eye to like a shaker too. So that is the die set from this month's kit, and then the stamp set has 6 beautiful large sentiments that say thank you, love and hugs, with love, never stop dreaming, well done, and you will be missed as your sentiments on there. That will fit inside the square that comes in here, or they'll fit inside all of the different frames that you can make with all the dies as well. So that's everything from kit number 68. And if you want a proper full in-depth look at that kit, then you can check out yesterday's video, which will be the full unboxing video. But for today's tutorial, I'm going to be showing you some ideas with the embossing powders, but also with the Nuvo drops as well, because there's kind of like some cards that cross over between them. I'm going to show you basically how to make this whole card, but in the process of making this whole card I'm showing you this technique of stacking up your die cuts and doing 3 layers of embossing powder to create like a faux metal embellishment. I'll also show you how you can thinly scrape your Nuvo drops across your Textured Craft Perfect to give them like a pearlescent textured kind of look, and also tap it onto your sentiment as well to give that a pearlescent sort of look. And then as I was playing with the embossing powders, I've figured out, or just realised, that obviously a foam pad is sticky, and I wanted something to frame around my sentiment, so I just used some of those little 5mm square foam pads, stuck them down onto a piece of vellum, and then poured heat embossing powder on top of them and heat set them, and that works really well. And also on this card I had used the well done stamp, but I felt like the outlines of the letters weren't standing out as much. So then I thought, well, okay, I'll fill in the letters using the Nuvo drop that you get in the kit. And then I was like, well, a Nuvo drop works as like an adhesive. So I put the embossing powder on top and then heated it. So you get this like bubbly kind of effect. And it works really well for this particular well done stamp, or any like thick, bold letter kind of stamps, possibly even filling in more like hearts or basic shapes and things as well. You can have a go with it. But I will show you this in the tutorial video as well. So we're kind of making a card, but we're also just playing with a few elements using the embossing powder too. So I'll move all of this stuff out of the way and come back, and we'll start on the triple thick embossing on one of the die cuts. So for this first technique, I've already die cut so that we're not wasting time watching me die cut 3 of these. And in yesterday's unboxing video, I will have shown you exactly how these kind of dies work, because you have the outside die and the inside detail as well. But for this one, I've just stuck the 2 dies together and then run them through 3 times so that they're in the same position to stick them together, so they're all sort of lined up nicely. On this card I did come back in and put another individual leaf, because I realised the leaf was exactly the same one that was on here, and I thought it would look nice mirroring that over there as well. But for this demonstration, I'll just show you it with this one. So first of all, you want to take your fine tip glue. Obviously you can use your fine tip glue nozzle on your Nuvo Deluxe adhesive. I just really like having a small bottle, so I do just decant it into a smaller bottle with the fine tip needle on there as well. And then you're just going to put little dabs of it all over the back of all of the little tiny fiddly areas. It doesn't have to be over every single little area, but all of those tiny little like curly Q bits from the swirls in there or around the perimeter. And then you can just dab that off on the back of your hand and place another one underneath it. And then you can get a third one. You can do this just with 2 die cuts as well. I tend to go either 2 or 3 die cuts, but then definitely 3 layers of embossing powder on there. But you can kind of do it however you like, really. You know, see which works better for you. Do you want to use a coloured card underneath? Do you mind having the white card? You know, all sorts of different ways that you can play around with this and see which way works better for you as well. Maybe you don't have any Nuvo embossing powders, maybe you've got a different brand. Maybe it works better having less or more stacked up die cuts for whatever brand of embossing powder that you have as well. So that is 3 of them stacked together. And then for the next part of this technique, we'll come back to these later because I've got a drop technique with those. But for the next part of this technique, you just want to get a piece of scrap paper, and then you're going to take your little clear mark ink pad from the kit, or you can use a bigger one or a different sticky brand of ink pad if you're not following along with, you know, actually having kit number 68. You can do this with any die cuts, obviously. You just press your ink pad all over it, and this is why having a juicy one is really good, because it's going to go down like the side portions of the die cut a little bit as well. And the embossing powder that we're using is a sparkly embossing powder, and you really want like a nice juicy ink pad to be able to grip hold of that sparkly or the glitter part of the embossing powder, so it doesn't all blow off as soon as you put your heat gun near it. So this embossing powder is called Silver Moonlight, and if you remember, I don't know when I've mentioned this, probably a few times really, with glittery embossing powders you want to make sure you really shake them, or any ones that have mica powder or anything in them, because if you you know, maybe this has been on your shelf and it's sort of settled over time because the glitter and the embossing powder particles are different densities, they'll kind of like settle maybe in the pot, or if you've been using it and you've tipped it back into the pot, you'll find that the glitter kind of statically clings to your paper more than the embossing powder, so then you get all of the glitter on the top, and if you then tip that back out onto here, you're going to get all of the glitter, not the embossing powder, and it's not going to like encapsulate the glitter. You're just going to have an area just with glitter, and when the embossing ink dries it will just rub off. So make sure you shake your sparkly or mica powdery kind of embossing powders before you use them. Then if we move this over to the other side of the paper so we're not on the bit with the ink, we can tip this over the top and coat it really nicely with the embossing powder. Sorry if you can hear Pumpkin barking in the background. Then we'll just get some tweezers to pick it up with. It's much easier doing this with tweezers so you don't burn your fingers when you're heating it. And then what I would normally do is I would take this off to the side and heat it. But because I'm doing a video, I'm going to put this back in the pot and then heat it in front of the camera. Obviously I don't want to do that whilst the embossing powder's there because it'll fly everywhere. But now we can put this back into our pot, and I suppose actually with a smaller pot of embossing powder you do kind of want to keep putting it back in because you've got that smaller quantity to use. And you can actually see on the paper a lot of that glitter is statically clinging to there as well, because that's just the nature of glitter. It's just quite a static kind of material, and when you put it back in the pot you can see, I think, that there's mostly like a big chunk of glitter right in the middle there. But if we want to use this again, which we will because we're doing 3 layers, we want to shake it and make sure it's nicely shaken up again. And I don't know if you can tell the difference, but that's more evenly distributed within the embossing powder then. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat this up, and I'm going to either speed this up or just turn the volume off and put some music over the top so you don't have to listen to the heat tool because it's quite loud. Okay, so now we've got the first layer done. You can see how it's a little bit patchy, it's very textured, kind of just looks like one layer of embossing powder on that die cut. And you can see actually, even though we've used the, you know, a really juicy sticky ink, a lot of that glitter does still fly off when you're heating it, but it's fine because we're doing multiple layers, but as you do more layers, more of it will stay you know, stuck, because you've kind of got the powder and the ink and more powder on top, and it kind of holds it all on better. So basically what we're going to do next is take our tweezers off of this, take our ink pad again and pounce it back over the top again just to cover it with ink. Then pick it back up with our tweezers, make sure we've shaken our powder, undo the lid, tip it back over the top, and then heat it again. And then we'll do that one final time as well. So I'll just speed up both of those ones so that you don't have to sit here and watch me do this exact same process again, but you'll be able to see it on the video. So I'll be back when I've done that. Okay, so this is the finished triple embossed, triple stacked die cut, and you can see how it kind of gives like a faux metal embellishment sort of look to it, and it really gives more of like an impact on your card. If you love like quite clean and simple sort of cards, just adding embossing powder to your die cuts can give them a really cool kind of look. And even if you just do it with clear embossing powder, perhaps you've cut your sentiment out of white and maybe you use your aqua shimmer over the top of the sentiment, and then use a couple of layers, 2 or 3 layers of just clear, normal clear embossing powder, and it gives kind of like that enamelled sort of look to it. But when you're using the beautiful sparkly metallic ones, like the gorgeous one we're getting in this kit, you get beautiful like metal kind of looks to them. And if you don't like this like perfect look to it as well, you come back in with some of your mousses and things, and like you know, put like coppery bits on there, like patina kind of colours on there as well, and make it look really aged too. You could do all sorts with this kind of technique. So that is the one that I have used on this card, which has now got embossing powder on it, but you see it's exactly the same as the one I've used there. You could actually use 2 of these to create a frame as well. You could have moved this further down the card and have 2 of them on the same card. I love that you've got this extra leaf here too. Actually, they could fit together like this. I'm sure there's multiple ways that these actually fit together to create frames, but I've also just, you know, added that extra leaf there to make it look a little bit different as well. And you get 5 different ones in this kit too. So I did decide to heat emboss all of these as well. Obviously for the other 4 I was using my big pot of the same embossing powder, not the little pot, because I want to be able to tell you in yesterday's video, because I haven't filmed that yet, how many things I managed to do and how much powder is still left in that as well. So this is one of the ones with some sort of large open flowers on there. This kind of reminds me of like a harp or something, that kind of like scrolled kind of design. Could even look a little bit like music stays with those lines going across it as well, but really lovely. I really like this one too. I've used this not as this technique, but just 3 of them die cut from different colours on a card. It looks really lovely just having 3 of them, but I think this one is designed, it kind of has mitered corners so that you can do a really lovely large square frame with 4 of them. And then you also have this one, which is a really gorgeous curve that's kind of like off-centre sort of curve. So you could put 2 together to give a circular element. You can put like these 2 together to give almost like an archway. You could even bring these 2 together as well and put one of the sentiments in the centre. There's so many ways of mixing and matching these with like the kind of sort of different styles between all of the different pieces. And I'm sure it's going to be really lovely for you to sit there, cut a few of them out, maybe just out of white card, and decide, you know, how you want to put these together to create some really unique different frames for your cards as well. I think this one just by itself is going to look lovely. I've actually got a card that I haven't quite finished yet, and I'm thinking of just putting that on there as well as a finishing touch to just really simple You're Invited going all the way down the card. I think that's going to finish that one off really nicely. But there's so many ways of using all of these gorgeous different little frames, and I just wanted to show you that technique. I know it's an age-old technique that's been around for, you know, forever, since embossing powders probably, but it's a really lovely technique to come back to as well. And I thought these dies work perfectly for it. But I've got a few more techniques that I wanted to show you. So, for the rest of this, actually no, let's show you this one first. For this card, we'll do all the embossing powder stuff first because it's easier. So for the rest of this card, I had heat embossed my sentiments. So this was just using the clear mark ink pad and embossing with the pot of embossing powder, making sure to shake it so you get a nice distribution of the embossing powder and the glitter on there. But I felt like, this is the card actually with just the 3 of those die cuts, but I felt like just the sentiment was too plain, and I thought, well, I could get a silver gel pen out and just do like the faux stitches around the edge of it like I would normally do. But then I thought, well, hang on, we get these 5x5 foam pads in the kit as well, and obviously they've got adhesive on both sides of them, and I have in the past heat embossed with one of the tape pens, or just with double-sided tape as well, or even just with blobs of glue and stuff too. So I thought, well, it's basically the same kind of thing, adhesive on a foam square, so why not actually heat emboss on the foam squares? And it worked really well, and I even did it onto vellum, and the vellum didn't curl, they didn't ping off the vellum or anything. That's just the adhesive from the actual packaging. It held it to the vellum and held the powder onto it whilst I heated it as well, and it was perfectly fine. And it gives a really cool look actually. It's kind of like encrusted. You could, if you wanted to, carefully go over pouncing that ink pad over the top of them again and get a second and third layer if you wanted them to look really more like maybe enamelled brads or something, but I quite like the dimply effect that has happened on these ones with just the one layer. So basically to do that, I haven't got quite enough vellum here, but basically I just cut a square of vellum that mounted around my sentiment nicely, so I'll just eyeball a sort of square shape there, and then I just went in with these and I did it so to try and get it a bit more even looking. I wasn't worried about them being perfect. You can do it up against a ruler if you really wanted them to be the perfect, you know, linear, straight edged sort of perfect square, but what I tend to do is I do the 4 corners just to get them in the rough positions, and then for the one that I did on that previous card, I did 1 between each of them and then 2 fitted between each of those areas. I think only one's going to fit between these on this one, but you can kind of do whatever sort of way helps you get the look that you're looking for. If you want it to be perfect, then you can use a ruler. If you're not that fussed about it looking perfect, then you can just eyeball it or make up your own kind of pattern to do like this to get them in the positions that you want them to be in. So I'm just going to go like this and then like that. So I've got all of that done. Then all I did was peel the backings off of all of these. Oh, that one's already off. They're really easy to take off as well with these Nouveau ones, or Craft Perfect ones even. They're really easy to come off, because I know some pads, like when I was starting out doing like decoupage and stuff, you'd only be able to get these 5mm square ones, and some of them were so difficult to get the backs off, you'd kind of give up halfway through doing your project because you couldn't get the backs off of them. So I'm just going to bring in that same bit of scrap paper that we were using before. Put that on top of there, and then just taking our little pot again, making sure to shake it then we can just tip this over the top of all of them. Now foam squares aren't sticky on the sides, so you're going to have the white sides, but it's still going to go with our card project because it's got lots of white on the card. And it's mostly just going to stick to the tops of all of those squares where the actual adhesive is. And if anything sticks to the vellum, it's pretty much just going to be the glitter, because the glitter is more staticky than the embossing powder. Although I think I did have a few flecks of embossing powder on this one, but because I was putting the sentiment in the centre, it didn't really matter. And I think it gives a nice look anyway if there's a few little specks of embossing powder for something like this that's not like 100% perfect. So we've got our embossing powder on there now, and we can tip the rest of that back in the pot. You can see how much is still in there, and I have done quite a few different things with this tiny little pot of embossing powder, so it really does go a long way, which is nice. So all we need to do now is heat this, and it turns pretty quickly as well, so I might just mute the sound and leave it in real time for you. So we have got a few little specks in the middle, but I actually quite like that. That would actually be a cool effect on just on vellum normally, just actually sprinkle some on and heat it from underneath maybe to get that effect. But anyway, that is this kind of like second technique of how you can do this. Obviously you might go a little bit neater than I've put them on there. They are a little bit wonky, but I feel like it really framed that sentiment nicely and gave a different sort of effect that you might not have thought to do before. You could even, if you wanted to, maybe you could have snipped out this flower and put the flower in the centre as well and make a different kind of focal element like that too. So we've got that technique that I've done, and then the other technique was this kind of idea. So for this one I stamped the well done, which I actually like cannibalised the stamp and cut it down the middle so I could have it offset like this, and I'll have shown you that in yesterday's video. And I did heat emboss first because, as I said earlier, I thought I was just going to have the heat embossed outlines as the outlines on there, and then I filled it with the Nuvo drops and put more embossing powder on. So when I was heating it, I kind of double heated the outlines, so they've kind of sunken into the card a little bit. The outlines aren't quite as nice as they could have been, but if you wanted to, you know, get better outlines around it, you could maybe not heat your embossing powder first, then put the Nuvo drops on, then add more embossing powder around the outlines of it as well. So I might just show you that way of doing it so that it's a little bit easier for you to kind of see how you might want to do this. So I'm just going to get a scrap piece of card because I've already finished that card, so I don't really need to make another one. And then I've got the stamp here, and you can see how I have cannibalised mine, but it sticks back together because photopolymer stamps are such lovely high quality. They will literally just stick back together as well. And whenever you do cut your stamps apart, if you just do it with one line, don't snip anything away, don't take away any of that photopolymer, you'll easily be able to put it back together like a puzzle, which is really nice. So if I just get a little acrylic block for this to go on, and then for this, I'm going to take the Clear Mark ink pad, stamp my sentiment on there, and put that like this, press it into position, lift that off, and then take my embossing powder and sprinkle that over the top, and then get my scrap bit of paper again to catch the excess. So now we've got our embossed sentiment, which you can definitely just leave like that. I just thought this was a different take on using embossing powders and using your Nuvo drops really. It's kind of combining the two of them. So I put that back on, shake it up so it's ready for me want to use it again, and then I'm not going to heat set this to see if we get a better result because of the way the outline kind of sunk into the card because I'd overheated it. So now we're going to take the Nuvo drop from the kit, which is the Wisteria Purple, and I'm going to fill in the letters. So I don't think it matters if you're like too neat with this, but we're just going to try and be as neat as we can. You don't have to do it in like one continuous bead, you know, you can like pounce it up and down and get it to fill in the actual gap as well. You can come back and fill in more of the areas too. And even if we're disturbing some of the powder on the outline, that ink, especially because it's a new little ink pad, should stay nice and juicy, so we should just be able to pick up that outline again when we tip embossing powder over the Nouveau drops too. So let's just do, I might just do one word for you so it's a little bit quicker and you don't have to watch me do the whole thing. But if we just fill in the rest of the letters. And when you heat Nouveau drops, it kind of gives like a bubbly kind of effect, which I think looks really cool. So if you had like coppery embossing powders and things, it might look really nice for like a steampunk vintagey kind of card, having that bubbled metal kind of a look to it as well. So I've just done the one to show you what it will look like. And then we can take this here and our embossing powder and tip this over the top, and it should hopefully grip back to those outlines again, and it has. So we've now got the word well really puffy and dimensional with our embossing powder on there, and obviously you would do both words, although it might look quite nice with one word in bold and one word not, so we shall see what that looks like as well. And then we just need to heat this, and in person you can kind of hear tiny little crackle noises. I will turn the volume off because this is so noisy, but when you do this in person you can hear tiny little crackling noises as the Nouveau drop is kind of heated. So I'll just heat this and hopefully you'll be able to see it as I do it. So you can see in some areas it's really bubbled up on there, and if there are any areas that you don't quite like the way they have bubbled, you can just poke them while it's still a little bit molten and push them back into position. And in some areas or in some places you might even get a tiny bit of that purple coming back through the silver embossing powder as well. So, you know, make sure you use a Nouveau drop that kind of goes with your project just in case that happens. But isn't that such a cool effect? And it's really dimensional as well. It's just a different way of using your embossing powders and your Nouveau drops that you might not have thought to before. So those are the three embossing powder kind of techniques that I wanted to show you. And then I also wanted to show you how you can just turn some of your Textured Craft Perfect into some gorgeous pearlescent kind of textured cardstock. I'm sure you used to be able to buy cardstock like this that had this pearlescent kind of finish and the texture on it as well, and it's so easy to do when you have a Nouveau drop that's practically the same colour, a pearlescent Nouveau drop that's practically the same colour as your textured cardstock. So what you need for this is an old gift card or something. I've got my mum's old historic Royal Palaces pass, and basically what you want to do is take a bead of your Nouveau drops, oops, got an air bubble, put it along the edge of your card, so any like old gift card that you've got, or like an old credit card, debit card, something, just put a bead of it along there, and then take it at like a 45-degree angle, so I'm kind of holding it like, say the paper is here, I'm holding it like this, and then you're just going to like scrape it across, and the idea is that you're just trying to put a tiny little bit of that Nouveau drop onto the texture of the cardstock. So you can just kind of, if you need to reload it with some more product, you can do that as well, but basically we're just scraping that across the card, and then once that dries, you can actually see the sheen already, but once it dries you have the perfect pearlescent textured cardstock. So if you love your texture card but get annoyed that Pearlescent card is smooth and doesn't like match the theme of your card, you can actually make your texture card pearlescent by using your pearlescent drops on it. So that's another kind of cool technique to use with the drops. And then in a similar kind of fashion to that, I was also, for this sentiment, because I had used that technique on the background of this, and then I put the you know, silver metal embellishments on the top, like faux metal embellishments on the top. I then wanted my sentiment to tie in, so I used the same cardstock to cut it out. I'm stacking it up to be 3 layers thick, just to make it stand out nicely and go along with that faux metal embellishment kind of look that we've already created on the card as well. So we're just going to put little dots of glue, just like we stacked up that original one at the beginning of the video, and just stack all of these together. And then what we're actually going to do is we're just going to pounce the Nouveau drops onto the top of this. So we're kind of, I mean, you could actually, if I had thought about it when I was creating this card, I could have just done this to another piece of card and cut the top one from this. So it already had the Nouveau drop on there as well. But I feel like maybe the way that I'm going to show you how to do it gives maybe a slightly thicker layer to it, so it kind of ties it in better with the heat embossed die cuts maybe. So I have squished all of those together and got them all nicely lined up. Then I've just got the scrap of card that I was using the last time, and basically all you want to do is just squeeze out a little blob of your Nouveau drops, and then just take your finger, or you can use a sponge if you want to, and then you can just tap it all over, and you can spread it if you want to as well, depending what kind of look you're going for. If you want a really smooth application, you can kind of spread it a little bit more than tapping it, or if you want a textured look, you can tap it and then you'll get like those little peaks in the Nouveau drop as well. But you can just spread that all over to give your card that pearlescent purple finish that we have also created in the background of this card too. So there we go, we've got our beautiful pearlescent stacked sentiment that matches perfectly with the pearlescent background of this card, and then we've got our beautiful triple heat embossed, triple stacked die cuts that give like a faux metal embellishment kind of look. So I'm not 100% sure what I'll call this tutorial, probably something to do with faux metal embellishments, but yeah, I think it's a few different techniques in here that maybe you haven't tried before, and it's a nice way of using a couple of the Nouveau items from the Tonic Craft kit, which is kit number 68, which is either called Frames for Friends or Assorted Frames, and there will be affiliate links in the description box below the video for the kit, and also any of the individual items that I've been using in the video as well, because I think everything is available individually other than stamps and die. So if you just want to get hold of the same embossing powder and Nouveau drop that I was using and cardstock and stuff, you should still be able to get that as well. So really hope you enjoyed the tutorial video. Thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see a more in-depth look at Tonic Craft Kit number 68, check out yesterday's video, which is my full unboxing video with a ton more samples in it as well. I think I've got like 7 samples altogether. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in the next video. Bye!